hello to all you guys out there in YouTube land. Now, I haven't done a serious video in a while, and for people who are wondering why, this is probably the reason. So this is kind of an addendum or a precursor to videos I'm going to make in the future. But I promised I'd make like a video to cam, and here it goes. So, the thing that really bugs me is the question of subjective morality, because a lot of times when people talk about subjective morality, they're looking at it from now, they're looking at it from like the picture now, this kind of great moral system, or at least semi-cohesive moral system that we have at the moment. And they seem to forget that there was hundreds of thousands of years before where the moral systems were different. Now, at this point, first off, you'll say, well, what's the kind of two parties that I'm arguing against? One is obviously the objective morality camp. Now, people who think that objective morality exists really do have to understand certain precepts on this. That to properly use objective morality, it must actually be communicated to the people using it. So, for example, let's take a recent example, say computers. Computers you purchase with your own money, and you have it, and it's yours to use. Thus, you get a file, you purchase that file, it's yours to use. But within the facility of the computer is to copy it. We don't really, now we're only really catching up with the idea of this kind of thing. But what kind of moral code does that break? I mean, if you're copying it and you're not distributing it to anyone, you're just copying it on your computer, essentially that would be considered theft. I mean, you're taking something and creating a duplicate of something you didn't create. But you purchased it. If you then have the right to do it as you wish, and the facility to do it as you wish, then what stops you from doing that? And unless someone actually communicates in an objective morality kind of world that worldview to you and says, well, this is wrong, then you're kind of stuck, aren't you? I mean, you're waiting for additional communications to new moral advances that happen. So that's your first quandary in a kind of objective morality kind of way, because you can't have hard and fast rules. You can't have thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt not murder, because murder, all those things has to be interpreted by the people, unless the person then gives an interpretation. And so it's a constant information and feedback thing. It needs to be. And until you can actually supply where an objective morality system is being supplied from, you're really at a kind of weird crossroads, where it's a bit like, well, it's objective, but I don't know where it comes from. Or it's innate, but then when new issues come up that can't have been innately challenged unless everything in the universe was, and then we wouldn't have moral quandaries, you see. If everything was already ordained in us and we already knew things, we would already have the answers for things when things come up. So that's the first thing. So apologies for rambling, but that kind of gets my issue with objective morality kind of out the way. Number two, subjective morality. So why is it so hard for people to grasp? Well, it's a timescale thing. A lot of people have difficulties grasping the timescale it takes for things to be to get to this stage. So let me give you a prime example. So let's just roll back, and I'd probably use this in another video, so just roll with me. So you're a caveman. You're running through the forest, a lion's chasing you. Now, you gotta remember, at this point in time, you don't have guns, you don't have mobile phones, you don't have iPods, you don't have the car. You basically almost discovered the wheel and flint arrowheads to stick on top of bleeding bits of stick. A lion is a pretty serious creature. So you run through, and as you're running through, there's a woman, like semi-naked woman, just there, like she's foraging for berries or something. And that wasn't sexist. Don't just if I get sexist comments, I will just be like, look, you didn't get it. Anyway, so you're running through the forest, and she sees the lions running, so she runs with you. You're running along, you get to a tree, so you climb up the tree, and you're up the tree together. Now you've got these quandaries. Now, this is the thing that really bugs me when people talk about subjective morality. They go, wait, you've got these choices. You can rape people, or you can kill people, or you can, So your choice could be, you could be quite justified in your choice of throwing the woman to the lion. But would the woman allow you to do that? That's the first off. Two, would you exude more energy forcing that woman to be fed by the lion than you would be to do something else? Because we're talking about the right answer here, because right and wrong kind of subjective, because, right and wrong changes. Nazis thought we were wrong, and I don't want to call the Nazi card, but, just an obvious opposite to the current regimes we have. So there's systems that think we're wrong, and we think other systems are wrong. So, the history's written by the victors. Back to the suggestion. So you've got the guy up there, and it's like you've got kind of lots of choices, but which one actually deals with your lion problem? Now, to me, and maybe I'm looking at it from my perspective, but the smartest thing would be to cooperate with two people. One person might eventually die out of it, but if you cooperate together, you eventually come out. Now that comes down to that, and he's like, why do you cooperate? Because basically, fundamentally, living things kind of exist. The process of, like, one of the things people ask is, what's the idea of living? And I'm like, things living. I mean, the fact we have living things is an idea that things that live kind of want to exist. Because if you had a living thing that didn't want to exist, and I use want in a very liberal term, not like a human desire kind of, but just because I still haven't found a better word. But anything that's living that didn't want to exist wouldn't exist. So you kind of have to go with the precept that living things want to exist, irrespective of what moral view you want to take on it. So, I mean, if you want to disagree on that fundamental point, that's another thing. But once you get that and things want to exist, existing when you're fragile means that you need to be cooperative, because numbers work better in most environments than not. So that's another. Once you get in that situation, being someone who's detrimental to the group, as you see with sort of wolves now, like you've got a wolf or a new wolf will come into an area and they'll be ostracized. They'll have to start off in the lower pack, even if they were the head of the pack they were in before, if they got kicked out for breaking certain social rules. So that's the thing, like, basic self-preservation leads you to work with other people, which leads you to get the grounding basis of a moral system. And thus, after time, because you have to remember this one, that we don't just forget moral systems. We don't just develop moral systems and forget them. We pass these on like skills. Like, you know, you learn to play the piano. You sit down and play and start off, someone else will come and train you. If no one else was there to train you, you would have to learn that for yourself. You'd learn, oh, this is what I like. And it would be a purely subjective and so on and so forth. And we then teach those skills to other people. We teach those skills and that becomes what we then deem as a social norm, which is kind of what's happened with morals. Something that was really subjective but actually led to the advancement and basically sustenance of our species became social norms, and thus the society taught them, and they weren't always the case. Slavery is a good example. Slavery is great for the slave owners. So when the slave owner was running the system, slavery's brilliant. But when we got to the stage where we started thinking about the being and the essence of a human being and their role in society, and the fact that no one really should be owned by another person, slavery was then deemed wrong. Well, after a lot of fighting, slavery was then deemed wrong. I mean, we do have still economic slavery. That's a different time. Anyway, I hope that kind of explains it, but this is like a precursor to the video I'm going to make. So, anyway, this is DR saying peace out. Thanks for listening to the rambles. Have a safe journey wherever you're heading, and I hope this comes out right. Bye! Look at my hair, look at my hair! Hello to all you guys. Let's see, are we getting audio? I don't even know. No. Audio. Yeah, there is. There's audio. Audio recording. Testing. 1, 2. I'll have to crank it up when I get them. Anyway. Hello to all you guys. Fucking hell! One hello, it was like